Yeah, gotcha.
It won't download.
Sit tight, don't go nowhere, okay? Are you ready? You go right now. Good evening and welcome to the City of Isanti City Council Budget Work Session for Wednesday, August 5th, 2020. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All council members are present for this work session. Do I need to list staff too, or are we okay with that, Ms. Wood?
You're
We
good.
don't need to list staff, do we, Mike?
No.
Any public comment?
Make a motion to adjourn.
That's funny. Okay, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion to adopt the agenda from Councilman Collison and a second from Councilman Lundin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
He's had enough, like I did last time.
I was like, are you all right there, Mr. Gordon? All right, let's move on to workshops. As usual, I think the council, you can just keep rolling, Mike.
Okay, yep, just interrupt if there are questions.
And that's, council agree with that? We'll just keep rolling. Any questions, we'll interrupt.
Yeah, yes.
Get her done.
So, same layout as last time. We've got the summary is the first 11, 12 pages. Then after that, we've got the detail of the budget, kind of the nitty gritty stuff, right? So I'll stick to the summary pages. And tonight, we're not talking about anything related to the tax levy. This is just enterprise funds, so business-like enterprises that we have in the city. Got the budget schedule. That's a repeat from last time. Just remember that we'll do the preliminary levy in September and the final levy in December. Water fund budget. Net cash flow is budgeted currently at $52,000 and change. We set water sales based on trend line average from 17 through 19 with the 2020 projection. I've added some information about debt on here so that all the council members have a clear understanding of what debt we have out there, what our payments are, and when those debt obligations expire. Page 5, water fund capital budget summary. For 2021, we've got queued up a well pump for well house number 2 and rebuild filter drain under rebuild filter 1 under drain. Those would be the two large items. The pump for well house 2 hasn't been done since 1991, so we hit our 30-year useful life. And the under drain is part of would be a succession of 4 years of projects for under drain 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pretty sizable money, but it's budgeted. It's part of the capital improvements plan, and we'll move forward. Reminder, all our capital improvement items, they're all scheduled, they're all budgeted, but anything that doesn't need to be done in this plan, in this way of managing that budget, we can push those back. So if we get to a point where we say this is not a critical item, it doesn't jeopardize the system, and it's in good condition, you just slide it back to the next year. If it's still good, you slide it back again. We're not obligated to do things in a particular year, but this would be the schedule.
On that, so I saw you had kind of noted down here that like that pump at well house number 2, pump number 2, that maybe could wait, but was that? What are your thoughts on that? I mean,
well, so we have the understanding from the city engineer about what the useful life ought to be, right? And so we set that at 30 years. But we'll do an evaluation of it. I mean, we won't just blindly replace it. But
So you're
the expectation would be is that it probably needs to be done. But there are lots of items in the water fund, but also in the sewer fund, where there are certain items that you do not ever want to have fail, and you just need to replace them on a particular schedule, to maintain the integrity of the system. But yeah.
So you're wanting to budget for it, but you're saying that.
We're
maybe-
budgeting for everything. We're
Yeah.
budgeting for everything based on its expected useful life. But another good example that I've had past experience with is a street sweeper, right? We say, okay, 20 years, that's plenty. Well, you get to 20 years and you look at it and you go, well, this is okay. Let's push it back a year. And then the next year you push it again and again. And the next thing you know, it's gone 25 years. Well, that's great. We'll let it go 25 years. It doesn't have to ruin the plan. So we can make those types of accommodations with this setup.
Okay.
Page 6, sewer fund budget summary. This year, the capital improvement expenditures are pretty light in the sewer fund. So this year, we're showing a net cash flow improvement for the 2021 budget of $707,000. That will not be the case every year, but it currently is set for 2021 to be that boat. Same deal here. Added some language for debt service, so we understand what we have, debt obligations we have out there and when those end. Capital improvements, we only have 2 items, computing and technology devices, and then a contribution to the liquor fund, assuming we go forward with our other projects and make all those pieces work together. Sewer would be contributing to that, same as water, simply because they pay for their infrastructure. They're a business, they have to cover their own costs. So to the extent that they will have infrastructure to that new facility, they need to be paying for it, they will own it. So we don't have a lot of expenditures budgeted in 2021 for the sewer fund, but we do have some really significant changes from last year's version. The big change is the addition of a new mechanical wastewater treatment facility in year 2040. I spoke to city staff, I spoke to the city engineer, had a couple conversations with Minnesota Pollution Control, trying to understand what might be the expectations for when we would outgrow our existing system and what we think discharge limits might be in the future. And the consensus from the city engineer, city staff, and MPCA is that it would be wise to plan to go to a mechanical plant in 2040. That either given population, industrial commercial development, and or discharge limits, we probably are going to find ourselves in that boat in that rough timeline.
Mr. Becker, when you say that, does that mean we're putting money away now? Is that what you're saying?
Yep, and I'm going to get to exactly how we do that. When I talked to MPCA, the understanding is that the state for the last, not quite 10 years, but pretty close, has had a really, really strong emphasis on wastewater infrastructure, water infrastructure too, but really heavy on wastewater infrastructure and discharge limits and cleaning up the water. And to that end, the state has continued for years now to continue to put more money into that and make more money available to municipalities. Their recommendation is that as things stand now, and they foresee it continuing in the future, is that when we get to the point where we want to do a mechanical plant, they expect that there would be money available as grant money. So one of the changes I've made into the plan here is we've got these additions here at the top of page 8. One of them is state grant funding in the amount of $7 million. Right now we're talking about a mechanical plant that would run $23 million. That would include not just the new plant, but that would also include decommissioning the ponds that we have out there and handling the infrastructure that's currently out there that would not be used in the new plant. Then the next part here gets to be kind of the philosophical thing. Standard straight finance recommendation is don't issue bonds. You want to save cash for everything. But on a project this size, there does get to be a philosophical discussion that should be at least considered, in that if you ask current residents or the residents living in Isanti between now and 20 years from now to foot $16 million of cost to themselves up front for a product that it costs $23 million and they may or may not use thereafter. Cases have been made to me by more than one council is that might not really be fair. It might be fiscally responsible to have saved that money ahead of time, but it might not be particularly fair, right? You might very well end up with a series of residents who have paid nothing in capital contributions toward the plant, but then would utilize and benefit from it. So how we've got the plan set up right now is that after the state has contributed 7 million, we have 16 million left roughly that we need to be able to contribute. The plan that I'm recommending is that we try to save half ahead of time and issue bonds for the other half, so that we're getting a segment of the population over the next 20 years contributing toward that 8 million, and then we've got another segment of the population, our residents, contributing an equal amount plus interest over the next 20 years. So we split that up and make that a little more equitable and a little more fair. So that's how that sits now. Of course, with that, you add in a mechanical plant that changes the plan a lot. So there's a very significant number of deletions from the plan, things that we would otherwise be replacing, but understanding that we're going to go to a mechanical plant, we would no longer replace. When I take all those items off, we're looking at about $7 million that came back then off of the capital improvement plan. And right now, as this plan sits, this is a workable plan. I've made some assumptions about what I think rates might be, right? But we'll get to a rate study here later this year, ahead of the December final budget meeting, and we'll finalize where those rates really need to be. But for rough projections, basically, I've just said, all right, we've been doing 3%. We're going to continue to assume that 3% increase in revenues. So, questions on that? And again, I mean, we're talking about a plant that we think will need to be in place in 2040, and we do have 20 years to sort it out. But that's the point of having a 20-year plan. Make sure we're not sorting this out in 5.
Time flies when you're having fun, though, right?
That's right.
So you're saying, so we've got $7 million that we won't have to spend on maintenance to the current system. So
Yep.
that'll save us. So we really have 14 million, so we've got to come up with 9 million, huh?
Well, our share, assuming the state funding is still there in the same ratios that it is currently, we would have $7 million of state money. That would mean 16 million of ours. But of course, if we just took 7 million out that we were already planning to spend, yeah, we were really the net difference to us is $9 million. Is the net difference.
And you're thinking we should borrow for that now, or part of it now and part of it later?
Yeah, I mean, you remember this, the plan that I presented last year was intended to cash flow, right? So that was saying, all right, look, we understand that we have these obligations and it's millions and millions of dollars, but we're going to cash flow this out to the future. And while I present 20 years, I do actually run it out considerably farther. But so we've kind of always been planning on having $7 or $8 million there in 20 years. Right? I mean, that's kind of been the boat we've been in. So it's really a question of, do we want to save the whole thing up front? Or do we want to say, no, that's fair and equitable for generations of Isanti residents to say, some people are going to be paying some money up front in the 20 years prior, and some people are going to be paying money on the back end in the 20 years immediately after the construction.
And then some people will be paying for the next time we have to put a new plant in.
Yeah,
After that, right?
in theory, at that point, then you're looking at a 20, maybe a 40-year window, probably more like a 20-year window where you kind of have a little reprieve before you got to start queuing up for the next major improvements. And that would depend primarily on, again, population growth, commercial industrial development, and discharge limits. But we start talking 80 years out, I'm not going to try to project that.
Yeah.
So if there are no questions on that, we'll continue with that. We've got 20 years to continue to tweak the plan. So, stormwater budget, operating budget. Right now we are at a net cash flow of 89,000. The capital improvements on page 10 for capital summary for stormwater. This will be the last year that we're doing major storm system improvements. So we've got 111,000 budgeted. That should get us through. Then thereafter, we're going to do an inflation-adjusted $10,000 a year to maintain the work that we've now done over the last will be 4 years here by the time we're done. And again, we got the capital contribution to the liquor fund for the infrastructure of the stormwater fund would own on that project. Page 11, municipal liquor store, right in line with other past budgets where basically we're budgeting to be net zero. Conservatively estimating revenues and expenditures at just 2.5% over the 2019 levels, which I'm sure will exceed, but I want to be able to see that even when I budget this conservatively, it still can cash flow. And then when we exceed that, that's fine, that's great. We just let that cash build up. Municipal liquor fund capital budget summary. Right now, as the plan sits right now, we'll try to make a new liquor store happen. So we've got some provisions in there for that. But that 3.4 million, that would be bonded. And again, that would be revenue bonds or tax abatement bonds, but we'd be paying for it with liquor store revenues, not tax revenues. And then I'm not presenting, nowhere in the packet is there a 20-year plan for the liquor fund, simply because if we do have a new store, it would be a complete rewrite on everything. And so if we do end up with a new store, we'll take the bid documents from that build and put together the capital improvement plan from that. Last item, general fund budget updates. I only have one update since our last meeting, and that is the state sent out certified LGA amounts, and it's $3,000 less than they had previously indicated. Doesn't really change anything, but just so that the council is aware. And then if there are no questions, it's just if the council would like to have a third work session on August 18th, we'd need a motion for that. Otherwise,
I personally don't see where we need another work session on it, do you?
Unless something dramatically changes, you feel that we probably should have one. But
yeah,
I do just have a pizza party for Mike, just because he did such a great job.
Pizza, don't be so cheap.
Oh, sorry, steak and
Roasted
lobster.
chicken.
Steak
Chicken
and lobster
wings.
for Mike and.
Roasted chicken right from Jimmy's itself.
Oh, I was thinking Quick Trip.
Oh, wow.
Ms. Woods is not in the mood for such nonsense at 8:20 at night. So.
I'm with these guys. I don't know why we'd have to, unless you see any red flags, Mike. I think this council is pretty well set that you know what you're doing, and if there's red flags, you and Pam would be waving them.
And Pam's over there shaking her head. Yep,
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 yep.
yep,
if there's something that the council needs to know about, you will find out, and if I think we need to have a meeting, I'll let you know that. So.
Sounds good to me.
Good job, Mike.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Councilman Lundin and a second by Councilman Burgley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Therefore, we stand adjourned.